On this episode of China Uncensored, can somebody just please explain this Falun Gong stuff already? Hi, welcome to China Uncensored. I'm your host, Chris Chappell. Ladies and gentlemen, behold the gravest threat facing China. Falun Gong practitioners. Look at them there, standing still. Or here, sitting still. Can't someone do something about this menace? Yes, good. Okay. Oh, wow. Okay, I get the idea. Wow. So what is Falun Gong and why is this happening to them? Now, there's nothing I'd like more than to treat this issue the way most Western media has. Ignore it and hope that it goes away. I mean, do you know how hard it is to report on this stuff? The Communist Party gets a little touchy about Western media reporting on Falun Gong. Even if the Western journalists want to report on it, that puts media companies in a tight spot. Are these companies going to risk getting kicked out of China? Are they expected to risk losing all that money for a poorly understood spiritual group just because it's the right thing to do? I mean, just the other day, I heard about this crazy group of people who believe in drinking some poor guy's blood and eating his flesh. Sounds like those sickos should be fed to the lions for sport. I mean, I'm sure there's no way people might have some misunderstandings about a heavily persecuted and suppressed underground spiritual movement when there's a massive regime trying to spread misinformation about it. If only there was an ancient Rome uncensored. But since this is China Uncensored, I guess I'll have to try and clear up some of the misunderstandings about Falun Gong instead. Have you heard of qigong? Qigong is a broad term for movements meant to exercise the flow of qi, or energy, through the body that's supposed to be good for the health. Think of Tai Chi as an example. Falun Gong, which is also called Falun Dafa, includes 5 qigong exercises. I think we can all clearly see why this is a threat to the party. Falun Gong also has roots in Buddhist and Daoist philosophy and thought, so you get talk about things like karma and reincarnation, tranquility, giving up anger and jealousy, trying to be less selfish. Now, Li Hongzhi, the man who first taught Falun Gong publicly in 1992, claims he was taught a version of Falun Gong from a master when he was young, and that the practice had been passed down from a single master to a single disciple for a very long time. But just because there are hundreds of traditional Chinese practices like Falun Gong passed down through the generations in exactly the same way, does that mean it's true? I mean, look at the symbol of Falun Gong, the Falun, or law wheel. That's a swastika, a symbol of pure evil, no matter how many thousands of years people have been using it before Hitler. Really? This is from 10,000 BC? But it gets worse. Whereas qigong usually is just about doing exercises to keep fit and healthy, Falun Gong goes beyond that and requires its practitioners to live their lives based on 3 dangerous and subversive principles: truth, compassion, and tolerance. Luckily, there are those willing to stand up to this madness. After the Communist Party started persecuting Falun Gong in 1999, state-run Xinhua news agency wrote, "The so-called truth, kindness, and forbearance principle preached by Li has nothing in common with the socialist, ethical, and cultural progress we are striving to achieve." Thank you, Xinhua. Now there is a voice of the people. I mean, truth, compassion, tolerance? If everyone followed that, China wouldn't have the kind of systemic corruption that has made China great. Corruption is why people the world over know the reputation of Chinese baby formula. And you know what they say, there's no such thing as bad publicity. So, obviously, the only people who would be interested in this kind of thing would be a few probably poor, elderly, uneducated women from the countryside. I mean, the facts speak for themselves. When Li Hongzhi gave his first seminar in '92, it was to a little over 100 people in a middle school in Changchun, Jilin province. 7 years later, according to surveys taken by the government, there were 100 million people practicing it. Wait, is that right? That would have been 1 out of every 12 people in China practicing Falun Gong. Huh. I don't think poor, uneducated peasant women can really cover that. Actually, it seems like some pretty high-ranking people in the Communist Party were practicing. And in every park in China, you could see more people practicing Falun Gong than even Tai Chi. It was also spreading overseas pretty rapidly. Man, Li Hongzhi must have been making a fortune on all of the free public workshops and free online books. and especially when people were going around teaching their friends and family the exercises for free. So why was this becoming such a big thing? Well, China, as you may know, is not exactly... well, it's a sludge-coated wasteland. People tend to get sick, and healthcare was becoming a problem. But apparently one of the big draws of Falun Gong was that people were reporting a lot of health benefits, even some rather miraculous ones. People with cancer, tuberculosis, paralysis, all kinds of nasty stuff were getting better. So many people were getting healthier from the practice that government organizations started calling Falun Gong a beneficial public health activity, and it was praised in state-run media and by Chinese officials.
If you took a walk in the park this morning, you can see that the recent hard work the government has put into public health activities has not been wasted. Every morning starting from 5 to 6 a.m., the city's green grass, parks and public squares become a morning exercise heaven.
Wait a minute. Isn't state-run media always telling me how evil Falun Gong is? Oh my. If you can't even trust state-run media, who can you trust? So, for years, the government was actually promoting Falun Gong because of all the health benefits people were experiencing. But more than that, China researchers tend to point out that Falun Gong filled a spiritual vacuum that had been left in China after the Cultural Revolution. Falun Gong was a traditional Chinese kind of spirituality that appealed to Chinese people. At a time when making money was the only thing considered important and getting rich was glorious, people liked something that taught them life was bigger than the size of your bank account. And Falun Gong really must have meant a lot to people, considering anyone's practicing it after how hard the Chinese regime has been trying to crush them. In 1999, then Chinese leader Jiang Zemin declared the party had to eradicate Falun Gong.
The People's Daily reports that Falun Gong is an evil cult. Falun Dafa is an illegal organization, and the decision is to outlaw it.
Since then, Falun Gong practitioners have disappeared, been tortured, raped, and killed in labor camps and prisons, sent to mental institutions, even become the cornerstone of China's organ donation system, as they have their organs ripped out and sold. And in the 15 years this persecution, genocide has been going on, Falun Gong practitioners have never fought back with violence. They have, however, been trying to tell people about all the stuff that's happening to them in China, which really is almost as bad. Why are Falun Gong practitioners always trying to give China a bad name? I mean, they claim they're a peaceful meditation, qigong practice or whatever, but they're clearly getting political. That's what I often hear Chinese people complain about, that Falun Gong is political. No. The way you're supposed to handle it when Chinese authorities do something bad to you is definitely don't question why they're doing that. Just keep your head down and try not to think about it. Definitely don't talk about it, ever. That way, the party can keep all those horrible crimes against humanity behind the scenes. Then, they can put on some nice shows like the Olympics opening ceremony or get placed on the UN Human Rights Council, and then everyone in the world thinks China's great. And that's what really benefits the Chinese people, because the party says so. But so, why did Jiang Zemin launch the persecution against Falun Gong? The answer has far-reaching implications for China. I'll tell you all about that in part 2. Thanks for watching this episode of China Uncensored. You can learn more on the Facebook or Twitter page. Be sure to check them out. Once again, I'm Chris Chappell. See you next time.